welcome to the Partnership Publishing Podcast, where books meet bold ideas and authors get to share their stories. Um, I'm your host, Florence Hannath, and today I'm very excited to share with you all. We are with Jonathan Cozens, debut author of Clarity Driven. Welcome, Jonathan. How are you?
All good this morning, thank you.
Good, good. It's an absolute pleasure to be able to have this conversation and be here today with you. So thank you ever so much for joining us. It's been a journey.
That it has.
So for those that potentially are not familiar with yourself and your work, um, maybe share just a little bit about yourself and what you've done.
For sure, yeah. I've got a long history in big business, corporate business, 40 years, 35 years in broadcast TV and corporate IT and various other similar kinds of things in management roles and technology roles. I ended up in running my own small business. I thought this would be a logical thing to do, um,
Yeah.
be the leader, be the boss. Everybody wants to do it at some point. And so I ended up in small business IT, running an IT services company. Yeah, that was an interesting journey going from big to small. More people go from small to big, I suspect. And oh boy, that was a journey of discovery.
Yeah, that ultimately, I'm assuming, naturally then led you down the path of writing the book that we now know today as Clarity Driven, How to Get It Right When You Can't Know It All.
Absolutely. One of the privileges of running an IT company, one of the things that makes it fun, is that you get a chance to look at other people's businesses in great detail. You must. I mean, it's inevitable. You've got to understand how they do what they do in order to understand how best to support them. And what I found was that it's very common to see businesses run in certain ways, regardless of how big they are or how long they've been going or what they do. There are certain operational traits
Mhm.
that seem to be common that I couldn't quite understand. Why are these things done in these sorts of ways? And the process of understanding this, the process of reflecting and saying, well, look, there's got to be a common reason went, oh, I bumped into something interesting here. I've got to write this down. I can't be the only one uh, to
Yeah.
be able to benefit from this. I've got to spread the word.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember as your publishers, when we first read that, well, I had that initial meeting about that initial concept, that idea, it was instantly, as a team, we got it. We understood the necessity of it, I think, more than anything. Also, naturally, being in business. So there was an incredible synchronicity there and a knowing that, yeah, this is a tool. It's incredibly needed. Let's get it written. Let's get this book out there in the world, so we can help as many people as we can ultimately. Which leads me to my first question. So, your book starts with a powerful metaphor about a journey gone wrong. Um, why did you choose this analogy? And how do you feel it reflects the common experience of running a business?
So I was looking for a way to describe how a sequence of seemingly insignificant changes can completely derail a plan. Let me recap.
Mm.
Let me just walk through this one again. Suppose you're driving to some place 100 miles away that you've been to before. So you already know where you're going and you already know how to get there, right? And even at 100 miles distance, you've got some confidence that you know what time you'll arrive. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, suppose there's a traffic accident halfway along the road and the police have shut the road completely, right? All of a sudden, you've got to get off the road. And even though you know the journey, you know that road, you probably don't know every single side turning, every single side road between your departure point and your destination. So now you've got two problems. One is how are you going to get back on the road? And the other problem is, what has that done to your journey? Are you still going to get there in a reasonable time? Is it going to be so late that you've got to turn around, so on and so forth, right? The point here is that these road closures, you don't know whether it's going to happen or not. They're unpredictable. So you can't know whether these random impacts are going to happen, and you also can't predict what the impact's going to be. Now, this is no big surprise. This is a metaphor for business, right? We have to deal with the unexpected all the time, right?
Yeah.
Unexpected things just happen. But per the example, these unexpected things create two problems. And it's generally the first one that gets a priority. In other words, how do we get going again? How do we get back onto the road? How do we make sure that there's no customer impact, that our partners are, suitably accommodated, that our suppliers, you get it, right? How do we get going again?
Mm.
The other problem is, what has this unexpected outcome done to our long-term plan?
Yeah.
And that doesn't always get recognized, and it doesn't always get incorporated into the solution.
Mm.
So your plan is your statement about the future, right? These are the things that I believe to be true in an extended time frame, 2, 3, 5 years, whatever it turns out to be. Something weird has just happened. You couldn't predict it. You pick yourself back up again, and you're back up and trading. But what did that do to your prediction? Did you take the time to incorporate these changes back into the plan? And the
Mm.
answer is typically no, that doesn't happen.
Mm.
So the flip side of all of this, of course, is that, and you might be sitting there thinking it, yeah, but come on, that's not a valid example because everybody has a sat nav. The
Yeah.
point I'm making here is that yes, everybody has a sat nav, but what's that doing? A sat nav is updating you live in real time, saying these changes, some closure on the road, this is how you get back on the road, and I will also tell you what time you're going to arrive at your destination. That's the magic. This is what you need for your business, a sat nav.
Mm.
And Clarity Driven sets out to explain what a sat nav for business looks like and how every business can have one.
Yes, it does. Thank you so, so much for sharing that. I think even that, if you can just, as a reader or a listener, taking that away as a first instance, it just genuinely shares the clarity and understanding that Jonathan has. And I would urge you to please pick up the book and read it. So naturally, you argue that business plans are a set of decisions with assumptions. Um, why is this perspective important for modern entrepreneurs to grasp? Because it was drilled in for years, business plan, you need a business plan, da, 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 da. Yeah. Why? Why is this more important?
So the bottom line is this: you can write, if you wish, you can write any old nonsense in a business plan, right? You can invent anything. You can say, I'm going to walk to the moon. That's my plan.
Mm.
And nobody will call you out on it unless you're trying to borrow money. But um, a business plan can be a random set of statements. However, if you want it to be a successful plan, you need to recognize that all of those statements may or may not be true. And those statements are based on corresponding assumptions.
Mm.
So if I can just illustrate, um, your first and biggest statement is, I'm going to go into business because whatever your reason is, right? It could be, I want to retire rich. It could be, I want to benefit my community. It could be any one of a number of reasons, right? I've got a colorful example in the book about being deeply concerned about snail safety, right?
Yeah,
I,
it's a great
I won't
analogy.
telegraph that one to
Again,
myself,
please
but
read the book.
that you're going into business for a reason. And that's fine. That's what happens for a lot of people. They go, right, this is my state, this is my decision, right? I am going to go into business because there is a corresponding assumption that you must recognize if your first statement is going to turn out to be true. And the corresponding assumption is, and enough other people will see the benefit in what I'm doing to pay me money to do it. In other words, there is an audience, a market for what I'm setting out to do, and it's big enough to make a viable business. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. You could say, look, I feel that too many snails get stepped on the sidewalk. I feel this is a terrible outcome, and therefore I'm going to start a business painting their shells high vis yellow and make little cute crash helmets for them, right? Nobody else cares. That's my vision. It's not a business because nobody else cares about snail safety. Not that I do, but it's just an example, right? So the point I'm making here is that your first big statement, I'm going to go into business because, has a corresponding assumption, which is the business is viable. Enough other people will see it the way I do to pay for it. So the next statement is, this is what we're going to do, right? This is the activity that we're going to carry out. And, you know, and it could be whatever is necessary. So if I was going into snail safety, for example, I might need to know about paint chemistry to understand about high-vis paint and plastics to understand little crash helmets. And again, crazy example, but you get the point. I need to understand how to
Yeah.
achieve the outcome that I've decided is desirable.
Mm.
So the corresponding assumption here is we are the right people to do this. We have the skills, we have the experience, we know what we're doing.
Mm.
So you can see that we're starting to build a pyramid
Mm.
of statements and corresponding assumptions.
Mm.
Um, and the next set of statements down are all about marketing and sales and service delivery and supply chain and finance and all these sorts of things that prove that we can actually execute on the plan. And of course, any business plan that you've ever read will have a marketing plan and a sales plan and so on and so forth, full of supporting information that says, I believe this marketing plan to be true and valid because of X, Y, Z information. So if you can accept that, right, if you can accept that that's a reasonable model, this is where it gets interesting. Your assumptions can be tested. In fact, they absolutely must be tested. And so where we end up at is a model where your business plan is a set of statements supported by corresponding assumptions, which can all be tested.
Yeah.
So when I said you can write any old nonsense in a business plan, you can.
Mm.
But if it's going to be a good plan, a successful plan,
Test it.
all of that information, all of those decisions can be tested by checking your assumptions.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, brilliant. And again, it's that information, that know-how. To some, you could be like, it's common sense. But sometimes when you're in it and you're not seeing it and you might not have that person to be able to speak to or understand it on a deeper level or have that conversation, to have that back and forth, to cross-reference and check that statement that you've just made, the book and how it's written, it is a step by step, it's a toolkit. It really, really is to be able to be that person. You can have the conversation with yourself to make sure that is all in accord and that you are preparing yourself and with more clarity ultimately. So no, that works incredibly well. And yeah, you write in Character Driven that working on your business really means making decisions, but many business owners are trapped in a reactive mode. And I think a lot of the business owners would completely agree, hands down, whether it's time, etc., but it's something's happened, you're reacting to it. similar to your sat nav analogy, the businesses need a sat nav. It'd be great. And ultimately, you're creating the tools to be able to do that. So how can they begin to break out of that cycle, um, and become clarity driven?
So the first thing to recognize is that so when I talk about reactive mode, what I mean is getting stuck in a world of short-term decisions. So if you're a business owner or a senior manager and you find that most of your time is taken up with things that are going to happen tomorrow, next week, next month, maybe even next quarter, you are spending a lot of time thinking about short-term tactical stuff, right? Now, this happens a lot. This happens for many businesses, and it's because when businesses start up, you have a plan, you've got a set of expectations about the future, and you've tested them to the best of your ability, but many of them will turn out to be wrong. You tested them as well as you could, but it turns out reality didn't recognize your testing and things are different. So when you launch a business, there's a lot of scrambling around and this didn't quite work, so we'll try that. That's much better. Okay. And so on and so forth, right? This very short term tactical thinking, this very short term scrambling to keep up to make sure that the business stays on its feet, perfectly natural, happens all the time. The problem comes when you've started to stabilize out a bit, but you're mentally still in startup mode. You still feel that the important stuff is happening today, tomorrow, next week, next month. And this is actually very dangerous because, again, to my first point about the sat nav, if you don't update your plan to reflect the new reality, which of course will be different, then you will be stuck in reactive mode forever because your plan is now out of date. And if your plan is no longer a reliable tool for looking into the future, then it's useless. I mean, it might be printed out very nicely, but it's no good to you. Yeah. So unless you have a plan that reflects where you are and is now useful as a tool for looking into the future, then yeah, you will get stuck in reactive mode. You will be stuck in what I call startup mode. And the point is, this is not an easy thing to recognize because you're busy, right? You expect to be busy, you're busy. But the hallmark is, what are you busy with? If it's short-term stuff, then there is actually a problem.
Yeah. It's a fascinating one, and I think there'll be a lot of people listening right now, nodding. Yep, yep, okay. Because it, I feel like this is every page with clarity driven. It is, you can agree with it, you could feel seen with it, you could be like, yeah, needed to know that, needed to be reminded about that. Of course, I knew this, but I'm not doing it. It's like reminders, but also alerts, warnings. It helps you really assess your current situation within business. But also, I feel like there is some crossover to even how you you can live your life. So, as much as it's completely correlated to business, you could also completely, from a personal perspective, you could literally look at this and think, oh, how am I living? To really do like a self-check. I think there's a lot of real good information within the book that can really help so many. You highlight and you use the word as well there. It's dangerous. Which, yeah, you can understand completely why it can become dangerous. And you highlight that of it's the danger of making decisions based on assumptions we want to be true as well. So not just that reactive kind of startup mode, but that danger of making decisions based on assumptions that we want to be true. So, and you're not necessarily thinking it with rose-tinted glasses, for example, but Because you believe, I think entrepreneurs, you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in your purpose, your passion, your mission. So you've got the belief, you've got that tenfold. Um, so yeah, you highlight the danger of making decisions based on assumptions we want to be true. So what's your advice to founders who are emotionally attached, to their vision, but lack potentially, supporting data?
So this is, if this is not tremendously common, then it's universal,
Mm,
right? You don't go into business by accident. You know it's going to be hard, and then it turns out to be harder than you thought possible. It's only that self belief that will keep you going because the world will be shouting at you, going, "You're going to fail." And so uh, that sense of purpose is what drives you on, and that sense of purpose comes from the things you believe to be true, right? The world needs what I'm doing, right? I'm on a mission. I'm doing something worthwhile. It doesn't matter whether it's community benefit or for profit. It does not matter. It's worthwhile if you believe in it. Now, the trip up here, the booby trap here, is that things that you believe to be true, things that you want to be true, make you feel good. There's a real dopamine hit there. I've found some magical solution or some magical piece of insight that nobody else has ever seen, and I'm super special for spotting it, right? That's a powerful drug. That will make you feel very, very good indeed without having to lift a finger, right? Now, that amount of reward for that little effort, that's a hard thing to break free from. But as you can imagine, it's quite dangerous. So, what I'm saying here is that there's a difference between self belief and being emotionally invested in things you want to be true, because the things you want to be true, you may not test, or you may not test so harshly because you want them to be true. Now, um, the thing that I would say here is be extra vigilant about this. Be mindful, be aware that there is a trap here. It's a feel good trap. So be extra robust on the testing of the assumptions that make you feel the best. And there are, look, I'm going to put my hand up to this one. There's an element of this that I made it as a mistake as well. There were certain things that I believed to be true in my business that turned out not to be. And that was a shock. That was a rude awakening. The world doesn't care. Um, and I had to adapt quite quickly and just say, look, you've got
Change
to
your
reflect
course.
reality. You're going down.
Yeah, yeah. Change your course into it and having that, I think as entrepreneurs, like having that understanding in yourself that change, got to change, and be open to that as well, and not just in a completely reactive state. So true. You call data, and we use data a lot. Obviously, data is vast, but you call data the lifeblood of business, which I believe is so true. But many small, medium enterprises don't necessarily use data effectively or even realize that they're gathering data, whatever data means in context. Um, what are the first steps a small business owner should take to make their data more useful, decision useful? Yeah, steps to take. And there's many, but
Right. So I'm going to go with three steps. So the first thing to understand is that simply operating a business creates data.
mm,
It's that simple, right? The Your marketing activity creates information. Your sales activity creates information. Your service delivery, whatever that looks like, creates information. What did you do? When did you do it? So on and so on and so forth, right? So there is information to be gained, but these are the three steps that I would say as three action points. The first one is find out what you have.
Mm.
So this could be in business software, this could be in spreadsheets, this could be on marker boards or on paper or on sticky notes on people's monitors. There's business information everywhere, right? Understand what you've got, where it is, and then make sure that it's available to whoever needs to make decisions, right? So make sure that all of your marketing data is available to the head of marketing, but that could be the same person as you. But also make sure that all of your marketing data is available to senior management. Again, that could be you,
Mm.
because it's vital stuff for making decisions, right? Understand what you have. Step two, understand where the gaps are. What do you not have?
Mm.
So if your marketing activity feeds into your sales activity, but there's some gaps in your sales activity, understand. So, for example, you could say, well, last month we sold 50 units or 5,000 units. Who did you sell them to? Well, we've got half that information or none of it.
Mm.
Or you could say, well, no, we know what we sold and who we sold it to, but we can't track whether there were peaks and troughs in the month. Ooh, that would be interesting to know. So understand where the gaps are
Yeah.
in your data and try and fill them. Step three is having oceans of information isn't very useful in itself. So step three is find ways to present that information in a useful way.
Yeah.
Now, there's different ways of doing that. You could have reports,
Mm.
which is historical, what's happened. You can have dashboards, which is what's happening right now. And you can have forecast, which is what we expect to happen.
Mm.
But all of those things, all of those three different ways of looking at information are useful for decision making. So make sure that you have those, at least those three different ways. And of course, there's comparing those to your plan as well. But those would be my three action steps for a small business owner that's looking to leverage the information in their business.
Yeah, no, great first initial three steps. And then, you know, as that individual, whether like you say, you could be that head of everything and there
Yeah.
is only the one of you, or there could be delegation and there could be team leaders and heads of departments that require the information. And then you can, I guess, look at how to then make that more smooth, so how it's reported and how you find that data, how quick can that then process be as well. But it all starts with having the data in the first place, to make those not just assumptions, but make informed decisions. Absolutely. Thank you for that. So you talk about the role of metadata and data about data in strategic growth. So not reactive, but strategic growth. How does understanding metadata transform how we scale a business?
So let's start with data about data. Okay. So again, let's take the example of marketing, for example. Okay. Take the example as an example. What a terrible way of putting it. But let's use marketing activity to
Yeah.
work with now. So you could say, well, in our marketing, we have a reach of so much, the total volume of people that could possibly have heard of us, and the number of people we've actually reached, and the number of people that are responding, and so on and so forth, right? That is data, right? That's information, that's very interesting information about what's happening in marketing. But what's also very interesting is how does your marketing activity affect other parts of the business? So in the book, I use the example of saying, well, how does your marketing activity affect HR? how does it affect when you hire your next person?
Mm.
You might say, well, I'm not sure it does. It absolutely does. If more effective marketing or just more marketing means more sales will mean more activity in service delivery, whatever that looks like for you. More activity in service delivery might well mean more people. So
Mm.
you could say, well, yeah, how do I leverage that marketing activity to help predict headcount?
Mm.
And this is what metadata is. It's data about data. I have data on marketing and I have data on my hiring plan. The relationship between the two is data about data. It's what we call metadata. And where metadata is vitally important is it's really, really handy for trend analysis and for causal relationships. How does one part of the business affect another? So, um, again, if you are looking at particularly forecasting, it's very, very handy to have these metadata tools available to you, your metadata relationships, um, to help you build your forecasts in meaningful ways.
Very much so. And you can see it. I honestly feel people listening now or watching, um, hearing you speak and knowing, I know it's all in the book, and more, in a lot more depth and detail. It's that conversation, understanding these elements. For a lot of people, they might be in business, they might never have learned any of this within a course, because they've been they're entrepreneurs, they've been led by their passion and their purpose. So to pick up this information, and be able to have that conversation with you through your writing in the book, it's invaluable. It's absolutely valuable. Um, from your own journey, and you do reflect and share, obviously, this has all come through your own experiences and life. From your own journey, what was the biggest insight you've gained, um, when you transitioned from running an IT company to helping others manage business information?
So the biggest insight was getting stuck in startup mode, getting stuck in short-term decision making. Right? It's because you feel like you're busy, because you feel like you're in there and doing stuff and making a difference, and you expected to be busy, and now you're busy. So it's not obvious that you're possibly doing the wrong things. And this was this was the light bulb moment for me, if you will. I realized that certainly in the early days, this was true for me as well. And I thought, this is crazy. What am I doing? Um, but working with a wide variety of other businesses, I see this as quite a common thing. So this was the inspiration, right? I mean, I'm going to do other things as well, but I needed to start with a book. I needed to start with an easily digestible statement, if you like, that says this is a set of conditions that you recognize, or hopefully you recognize, and if you do, this is what to do about it.
Yeah, it is. It's massive to have that insight and then to be able to package it in a book it's incredibly digestible. And we have graphs. It is easy to understand, easy to digest. It is that conversational piece. The author tone, the writing voice that you have is incredibly relatable, and you feel just held, supported throughout it. And yeah, it really, I think, especially if, and I know we were speaking about this even when formatting the book and laying it out, and the how to get that message across to people that are in business. If you're in business, whether it's pre-startup, you're thinking about it, you're considering it, whether you're kind of in the business that is of someone else's, And there's an element of potentially even the other end of the scale with that succession plan that potentially needs to be infiltrated. But you're wanting and that things could be done maybe that little bit differently. It's an absolutely fantastic book to be able to read. Um, Give that time, give that clarity, give that time to yourself to be able to read, to be able to work on yourself, but also on your business rather than being in it. As you're saying, that was your biggest insight. Being able to take that step back, work with that, give yourself that time, but then also have that conversation. It opens up a conversation and a dialogue for other people within the business to also read the book, be on that same page, be questioning, yeah, that reactive state, that reactive mode potentially. Um, or not, but most obviously you've noticed in your life's work that's the most common universal kind of state. Um, so you also discussed the psychological barrier leaders face. So when revisiting assumptions that may no longer be true, as you also could relate, how can leaders build a culture where changing course isn't seen as failure? Now, some people are really amazing at it, happy to down tools. No, that didn't work. Let's reroute, redirect. Um, but yeah, how could they build that culture?
So I think the first thing to say is I'm not an authority on business culture. There are many experts out there that are really good at this stuff, and I'm happy to work alongside them. And I've met some really cool people.
Mm,
Um, and there's also some very, very good books on business culture. So I'm going to skip over that bit a little.
mm,
However, what I would say um, is changing course, adapting is it can be easy and it can be very difficult. If the business, well, yeah, no, if the business as a whole is invested in your long-term goal, let's say 3 years, it's a good example. So if you can say to the business, right, this is our 3 year objective, everybody needs to be on board with getting there,
yeah,
then you're in an interesting position because your objective is now the boss.
mm,
And any adaptations or changes of direction or anything like that that needs to happen is very visibly
mm,
in the interests of the objective.
mm,
Okay. Whereas if the objective is not the 3 year goal, the objective is not the boss, if the boss is the boss,
mm,
then you're in a much more difficult position because either he or she has to be right all the time, which is an impossible task,
mm.
or um, a culture forms where their decisions are never questioned. Don't argue with the boss, um, and that's again that's impossible. That's where adaptations and adjustments are seen as a bad thing, right? The boss said this way is true. We're going down this road. This is what we're doing, and then it turns out that that road is not viable.
Yeah,
What are you going to do, right?
yeah.
You either change, in which case the bosses seem to be wrong,
Mm,
which is a very hard pill to swallow for some people,
mm,
or you don't change,
mm,
in which case that's a bad outcome.
mm. Exactly that, isn't it? No, it's very, very interesting. Um, so a couple of more questions. Really enjoying this conversation. The book dives into legacy systems, dashboards, the role of AI, touches on it, not massively, but what is the one tech tool or principle you believe um, every clarity driven, if you could choose one, there might be more, um, but you believe every clarity driven leader should adopt today if they can?
So it's a principle um, rather than a particular
Mm,
technique. It's not a tool, it's not a technology, it's simply a principle. And the principle is this: management reporting comes first.
Mm.
Okay. If you have, I don't care what spangly bit of software you've got or which AI agent is the flavor of the month this month, or, they come and they go, right? They are only of value if they give you accurate, timely, reliable management information, decision making fuel. So, um, when you are thinking about technology, right? You don't have to be a technologist to think about technology. You only need to think about, how is this stuff useful to me?
Yeah.
And the way it's useful is, does it tell me what I need to know to make effective decisions? That's it. Everything else you can just delegate to the technology people.
Yeah. No, love it. Thank you. Thank you for that one. Um, and lastly, if a business owner listening right now only takes one message away from your book, Clarity Driven, what should it be and how can they act on it immediately?
So the takeaway would be this: embrace the idea that working on your business means looking into the future with clarity and intent. Managing tomorrow or next week or next month has little to no value without a long term plan. Identify your 3 year goals and use them to plan all of your activity forwards. It's not a small task, right? It's not easy. It's a big piece of work, and it'll require as much accurate, up to date information as you can find.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so, so much. I feel people listening, watching this, we've covered a lot and also, you know, quite a deep level. I hope people feel inspired. They feel like, yes, I can do this. It's a piece of hope as well, potentially for a lot of people in business. It is available, your book, Clarity Driven. Um, it's available in all good bookshops, all retailers, available worldwide. Um, it's available. It's 9.99, and yeah, I would urge anyone listening to this that have felt I can relate to that or not, buy it, read it, enjoy it. And how can people connect with you, Jonathan, moving forward? Because like you say, this is step one for you even, putting all of your insights into book form. How can people connect with you and yeah, what your next steps are?
So, the best way to reach me is LinkedIn. I'm fairly active on there. Claritydriven.biz has some information, a little bit. That's very much a site in build.
Mm.
And jonathancozens.com
Yeah.
also has some information, but LinkedIn is probably your best bet.
Yes. Amazing. Well, please do connect with Jonathan, LinkedIn. And likewise, if you've got any questions, by all means, feel that you can contact ourselves too at partnershippublishing.co.uk. Um, thank you so, so much, Jonathan. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as we have because it really is inspiring. And yeah, thank you so much.
You know me, I'll talk about this stuff for hours.
Yeah, it's the best. So, no, thank you so, so much. And we'll see you next time.
Looking forward to it.